thanks everybody for joining us. One of the things that we wanted to encourage you to do is to share your comments in the chat. So practice using the chat feature. Tell us if you've ever received a Workforce Training Fund grant, what training topics you're interested in, and really what are you looking to take away from the session. As you heard from John and Jeff, the Workforce Board has a myriad of resources for you, and we really rely on the Mass Hire offices to be our partners to share business insight into a particular region. So it's really in your best interest to get to know them because they really connect businesses in the region with resources like the Workforce Training Fund. So I'll start with this. Knowledge is power. Whenever I do these presentations, the most common reaction I get is, wow, what a great program, often followed by, how did I not know about it till now? So rest assured you're in the right place this morning because just knowing about the Workforce Training Fund, whether you need it now or in the future, gives you a competitive advantage. Also, if you're here this morning, it means you have power. So we are the lucky ones. So the mission of the Workforce Training Fund is to give Massachusetts employers the financial resources they need to invest in their workforce and improve employee skills and help to maintain the economic strength of the businesses in the Commonwealth. It's really a win for the employee who's gaining new skills, often accompanied by wage increases and promotions. It's a win for the employer who benefits from a better skilled workforce. And it's a win for the state since businesses that complete Workforce Training Fund programs add jobs at a higher rate than average. And the program has real scale. Last year, the Workforce Training Fund approved more than $20 million to more than 600 businesses to train more than 12,000 workers in the state. And job growth is a key metric when we look at outcomes. In fact, for the last 3 years, businesses that completed a Workforce Training Fund general grant grew jobs an average of 8%, which outpaced both the United States and the Massachusetts as a whole. So how is it funded? The Workforce Training Fund is paid for by Massachusetts employers through a surcharge on unemployment insurance payments. It's essentially a payroll tax. And it equates to about $8.40 per employee per year that an employer contributes. And collectively, this trust reaches between $18 and $22 million annually, which we use exclusively for these incumbent worker training grants to give businesses back the money that they've contributed in order to upskill their workforce. And Commonwealth Corporation, my employer, we administer the Workforce Training Fund on behalf of the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development, so EOLWD. And to the right there, far right, that's Secretary Rosalind Acosta at one of our grantee sites, Jillian's gluten-free food up in Salem. So a couple of eligibility requirements. First and foremost, in order to be eligible to apply, you must be contributing to the fund through your unemployment insurance. So all for-profit companies are automatically contributing. So if you're a for-profit company in Massachusetts, you're automatically contributing and you can apply. Nonprofits are a little bit different. So some nonprofits do contribute through their quarterly unemployment payments, what's called a contributory method. Entities that are not eligible for training include federal, state, and municipal government employees because they often have their own unemployment insurance system. And then nonprofits who use the reimbursable method for unemployment insurance. In other words, they're self-insured. So a lot of large hospitals and universities fall into that category. They're not contributing and therefore they're not eligible. But if you are a nonprofit and you're not sure whether you contribute, the first thing I would suggest you do is check with your payroll department and they can pretty quickly tell you if you pay unemployment insurance quarterly. But getting back to my original point, if you're a for-profit, you're automatically contributing, no question. So with the Workforce Training Fund, you can train all your W-2 Massachusetts employees. They can be full-time, they can be part-time, they just can't be temp workers or contractors. And another condition is that the training has to happen on company time. So you have to pay your employees their regular wages as they go through training. And then finally, like a lot of state programs, you have to be compliant with state agencies, including the Department of Unemployment Assistance, the Department of Industrial Accidents, the Office of the Attorney General, etc. So one of the first things I suggest businesses do if you're looking to apply for a grant is to get your certificate of good standing pictured here on the left from the Department of Revenue. So you can link to it in several places on our website. It just shows that you're up to date on your financial obligations to the state. So we don't need something from the Secretary of Commonwealth on the right. It's from the Department of Revenue. It's free. It just takes a couple of days to get. And then when you apply, it should be less than 6 months old. So if you get your certificate of good standing and it takes you, a little longer than 6 months to get your application in, you'll just need to log in and get a new one issued. So this is a spreadsheet or flow chart that we've developed because with feedback from the business community, we've streamlined the program into 2 separate programs. We used to have 3 programs, but now we have 2. So we're going to talk about the Express program pictured on the left, which is fast applications, streamlined access, really good for smaller scale training needs. And then on the right, we'll talk about the General program, which is for larger scale, 2-year customized training programs where you pull in the trainers of your choice and deliver training at your location. And this flow chart is a really good kind of decision tree, and it lives on our website. And again, we'll be sending you all copies of the presentation after. So in July of 2021, we relaunched the Express program, in part because of some of the emerging needs that we were hearing from businesses kind of coming through and out of the pandemic, and some of the needs that were arising. So as of July 1, we made a couple of changes, and essentially the Express program, as I mentioned, gives you streamlined access. It's a smaller scale training needs. It's a very fast application, and you can apply for grant funds of up to $30,000 in a given year. You can reapply as many times as you like as your needs emerge, just not to exceed that $30,000. So it's a 3-week lead time. When you submit your application for an Express program, it should be at least 3 weeks before the start of the training. You can choose your course from an Express course directory. One of the most important things to note is we have this dynamic directory. You can search by keyword, training topic. If there's a training that you're interested in, maybe it's a community college, maybe it's at an industry association or some private trainer, that trainer can register their course to the directory. And once it's there, then you can apply for Express funding. So one of the big changes that we made as of July 1 is that we now offer 100% reimbursement for small businesses, which we define as 100 or fewer employees in Massachusetts. So we would fully fund any of the training that you access through the Express directory, up to $3,000 per person per course. And again, maximum $30,000 per company per year. If you have over 100 employees, you're still eligible for the Express program, and we will reimburse 50% of the cost of training, up to $3,000 per person per course, $30,000 in a given year. So this is a list of common topics that we see businesses using the Express program for. Now, these are just examples, and they're not exclusive to the Express program. You can also access these same topics in a general grant, which we'll talk about. So some of the topics that we see most often include sales and customer service. This could be seats in a public course, or you could have a trainer come to your location and deliver it specifically for your employees. It really depends on you and how the training is structured. Business or technical writing, management and supervisory skills. We fund a lot of training on management and supervisor training, both in the Express and the General program. For example, you might have someone on your staff that's been with your company a long time. Maybe they have a lot of institutional knowledge, or they're really good at their particular job, but you've promoted them to manager and they've never actually managed people before. So a 40-hour leadership course will give them the tools that they need to mitigate conflict, motivate teams, give effective feedback, etc. Network administration, IT, cybersecurity. The nature of work is changing, as we know, and it's critical to keep your company's information and your customers' information safe. So Express is a great way to get that training. Quality assurance, ISO. So there's a lot of businesses in Massachusetts that are part of a supply chain, and their end user might require that everyone in their supply chain have these quality assurance, whether it's the Department of Defense or aerospace, for example. Software training, everything from Excel to Zoom 101, MicroCAD, CNC machining, blueprint reading, ICAR, and then training that can lead to professional certification. So the Express program will pay for training that can lead to a certification, just not the cost of the certification itself. So some topics include IPC certification, project management is a big one, like PMP certification, and then human resources, so SHRM certification. I was actually speaking with someone recently that's an office manager, and she's been taking on a lot more HR responsibilities, but is feeling a little bit overwhelmed because there's so many statutory and regulatory requirements that she's now enrolling in a SHRM program so that she has those tools at her disposal. And it's a benefit for her as an employee, gaining skills as well as the employer. So that's just a list of topics. Again, it's an exhaustive list. You can find hundreds on the directory on our website, workforcetrainingfund.org. So the second program pictured here on the right is called the General Program. And this is really good for larger scale training projects. And it's actually where the majority of the funds of the Workforce Training Fund are spent. Somewhere between 80 and 85% are concentrated in the General Program, although the Express Program has been growing really rapidly and is starting to catch up a little bit. So with the General Program, you can apply for up to $250,000 for a customized 2-year training program. So what that means is that you pull in the trainers of your choice, you do a needs analysis, determine what topics you're interested in, what trainers you want to use. And I'll point to a place on our website where you can see a list of grants that have been awarded. So you can see a list of trainers and training topics of grants that have been awarded in the past few years. So with the General Program, one of the conditions is you have to match grant funds dollar for dollar. However, it's not an out-of-pocket cost. It's an in-kind contribution. Because you're paying your employees as they go through the training, those wages and benefits count in your matching funds column. You can also include other expenses you might incur, like if there's meals you're bringing in, or if you're renting space or equipment, or there's travel between locations. All that would count towards your matching funds. It's essentially your investment in the training. So the grant pays for the training, you pay for the employee's time, and that's almost always enough to meet that one-to-one match requirement. So one of the exceptions to the one-to-one match is ESOL, or English for Speakers of Other Languages. That's one of the priorities of the fund. We want to make it easier for businesses to use the grant to pay for ESOL. And we'd heard that sometimes meeting the one-to-one match was a challenge. So we've removed that barrier. And if you are interested in ESOL training, if you have employees with limited English proficiency, please contact me and we can talk through some best practices. And that's also on our website as well, but I encourage you to reach out. Side note, sorry. So with the General Program, it's a rolling application process. So one of the benefits of the Workforce Training Fund is there's no deadline to apply. You can submit your application at any time, and we award grants every month. So you can expect to hear back within about 60 days on whether or not your general grant has been awarded. So with the general grant, it's a cash outlay. So once you're awarded, you sign a contract and we will pay you the first 25% of your grant funds, and you can start training and pay your provider. And as you spend that money down, we'll send you the next 25%. So there is some outcome tracking and reporting required throughout the grant. So the reporting is that we will give you a pre-populated template where you can track training attendance. Again, so you'll know when you've spent down that first 25%. And the outcome tracking we'll talk about in just a minute. So this is a list of topics that businesses often use the General Program for. So as you can see, again, leadership and supervisory skills. So instead of sending 1 or 2 employees to train like the Express Program, you might have a trainer come in and work with several groups of leaders or emerging leaders to train several cohorts. Process improvement. So one of the most in-demand training topics we see, especially with the General Program, is process improvement or lean. So I don't know, by a show of hands, if you've ever heard of lean, it's really big in the world of Workforce Training Fund. It started in the manufacturing industry, but it really lends itself to any industry, from banking to medical offices. It's really about mapping out the steps in a process from the people actually doing the work and trying to figure out how to build in efficiencies to save time or money or steps. Contingency planning, problem solving, root cause analysis, ESOL, quality assurance, again, communication, team building, conflict resolution, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Supply chain management has been a popular topic of late. And then finally, train the trainer. So we encourage you to include this in your training plan, because then after the grant has ended, you'll have the institutional knowledge to deliver the training to any new employees that you hire. Just a sampling of topics. Again, there's no limit to the number of topics you can use the program for. So a couple of the requirements specifically for the General Program is what we're looking to do is we want to give you money that will supplement but not replace private investments in training. So what that means is that the Workforce Training Fund doesn't pay for anything that's mandated by law, for example, OSHA 10, or training that would take place anyway without a grant. So we don't pay for the regular onboarding that you need to do for employees, or training that's considered the cost of doing business or that you do anyway. What we want to do is help supplement that or augment what you're already doing. So when you submit your general grant application, it should be complete, which means it's going to have the certificate of good standing, which we talked about. The training plan. So this is, again, specifically for the general program. You've submitted an application. The training plan will have the modules and the courses. So the course descriptions, the syllabus of what's being taught, a cover letter, which is optional. And if you are training any members of a union, we'll need a union letter of support. And then finally, for the general program, companies have to be financially viable and produce 2 years of financial statements if requested. We do our own Dun & Bradstreet report, and that usually gives us the information that we need. But if requested, you have to at least be able to produce 2 years of financial statements. And that's just to make sure that you've been in business long enough to at least be able to have 2 years of financial statements and that you're on sound footing. And then you can see a full list of guidelines at our website, workforcetrainingfund.org, but we hit on the major ones in this presentation so far. This is a list of selection criteria that the reviewers use when they're reviewing general grant applications. Now, I want to stress, you do not need to tick every, you don't need to tick every box, but a competitive grant application should at least appeal to one of the following. We're looking to see whether the grant will either increase the skills of low wage or low skilled workers. Will the training create or preserve jobs? We see a lot of applicants appeal to this one. They say, yes, the training is going to make us stronger. We're going to be able to hire. Will it provide a positive economic impact in a region with high levels of unemployment? So you're going to be adding jobs in a region with high levels of unemployment. Will it include a significant private investment in training? So that is, even after the grant has ended, you're going to continue that culture of training. Will it supplement rather than replace private investments in training? Are you in danger of offshoring jobs? We want to give you funds in order to help keep those jobs here. And also other priorities include small businesses, businesses that have recently moved to the Commonwealth. And then here on the right, adult basic education or remediation. This could be, basic math, basic literacy, ESOL, minority owned or women owned enterprises, and consortium applications. Again, this is just the lens that we use when we're looking at the application to say, will it tick any of these boxes? And I will say too that the majority of applications that we get for the general program, somewhere north of 80%, are awarded. So this isn't like a pie in the sky grant that you have a slim chance of getting. This is money that you're contributing to as employers, and we really want to give it back to you. And these are the things that you should keep in mind. This is, if you've seen my presentation before, I use this all the time. This is what I call the three-legged stool of a successful grant application. So the reviewers are really looking for 3 things. The first is the need for training. So that is, what's the business problem you're trying to solve, or what's the opportunity that you're trying to meet with the training? And then the second thing is the training plan itself. So that should be a set of logically related courses helping you meet that objective. And then the third is a set of KPIs or key performance indicators that you'll use to measure success, so that by the end of the 2-year grant, you'll know where you moved the needle and some of the things that are important to you. So these are things that you're already measuring, and you're going to identify them in the application and tell us how you want to improve them. So I'll give a quick example. So we are a community bank with 8 locations, and advances in online banking mean fewer people coming into our brick and mortar locations, which is so critical for us to be able to meet face-to-face with our customers, to be able to cross-sell our products. So we need to make every interaction with our customers count. So our training plan is going to include sales and customer service training for all our customer-facing staff. We also want to offer universal banking training to a number of tellers so they can handle all types of accounts, from personal, business, and loans. And then success metrics, or KPIs. We want to increase the number of accounts per household from 2 to 3, increase assets from 10% from X to Y, and promote 10 employees, for example. So that's how it all works together. What's your objective? What's the need for training? The training is logically related to helping you meet that. And then how are you going to measure success? In a nutshell, that's what we're looking for. So sometimes grants are awarded to a consortium of businesses. So if you're a member of a labor organization or a chamber of commerce or an industry association, you might want to consider applying together as a consortium, especially if you're a smaller company that only has 2 or 3 or 5 people that are going to go through training. you might want to partner up with other companies or organizations that are interested in the same type of training that you are. So a consortium can be led by one of the companies seeking the training, a labor organization, mass hire workforce board, community college, chamber, industry association, really just some qualified convening body. So recently we had the Mass Nurses Association apply for a grant, and the New England Appliance and Electronics Group, which represents independent appliance retailers. Those are some examples of what a consortium might look like. Finally, I just want to share a success story. So we have several success stories available on our website, and there's one I want to share today on Canteenos Bread Company. It's a family-owned, fourth-generation company established in 1916. They have around 200 employees, and they produce 500,000 units of bread and rolls every day to be sold at restaurants and retail outlets nationwide, from supermarkets to delis to national restaurant chains. And they're now in their fourth generation of leadership. So in their application, their training objective, well, they had several needs that they wanted to resolve. And the first is that as a family-owned company, they'd made advances in production and distribution over the years, but they'd always managed the same way, that is in silos, and they wanted to evolve their management into the 21st century. Second, even as demand for their product has grown, the efficiencies have not, and they're in competition with lower cost states, and they wanted to improve their efficiencies and do some lean training. And then finally, the majority of their employees, 95%, are immigrants from other countries, and they wanted to reduce communication breakdowns that can impact productivity, quality, and safety. Now, they'd actually been running ESOL programs for a number of years, and this was really like an advanced ESOL for math literacy because of the math needed in baking. So their proposed training included leadership and supervisory skills for upper management as well as emerging leaders and supervisors, lean and process improvement, and then, as I mentioned, advanced ESOL. So here are some photos of the training in action. I happened to be there on a day when this class was being taught interpersonal communication for managers and supervisors. So they were reviewing their DISC assessments and discussing how that plays a role in effective communication, how an extrovert will communicate their idea with an introvert. And with so many generations and cultures, they really wanted to kind of have this common language to talk about interpersonal communication and its impact on interactions. And they also had done some lean training, or 5S, before and after. So you can see on the left, some of the shorter stacks in the front take up too much floor space. So the after is that they're more streamlined, uniform stacks. And then I just wanted to share a quick story about Canteenos because they were, almost finished with their training, but not quite, when the pandemic had hit. And pretty much overnight, they lost all their restaurant business. And so the owners of the company, like most of us, were pretty shocked when they went into the supermarket and saw some bare shelves. But they saw an opportunity here to grow their retail business. So they approached the supermarket customers that they had, and they offered to do some of their grab and go and bakery items because the supermarkets were dealing with some staffing issues. Then they contracted with several national bread manufacturers to do their production, and it paid off. And Canteenos is very proud of the fact that they never closed. They never stopped production. They were able to produce the same volume as before, but now with fewer resources as they were learning how to operate leaner. So the training really came at a good time that helped them react faster than maybe they would have. So their training outcomes that they shared with us are that they reduced their raw material waste by 25%. Their goal was 5%. They reduced complaints related to freshness from 49 to 3. And their safety record for 2020 was the best in company history. They promoted 7 emerging leaders to group leaders or line leaders, and 1 supervisor was promoted to a leadership role in their safety program. So again, you can see a series of success stories on our website. Just gives you some ideas of types of training that other companies have done. And here's a list of suggested next steps, because we've shared a lot of information. So where do you go from now? So the first thing I suggest you do is to get your certificate of good standing from the Mass Department of Revenue. You'll really need that for any state program like the Workforce Training Fund. And then second, do a needs assessment. So what type of training do you need? Is it small scale? Is it larger scale? Talk to your employees, talk to your managers, find out what they're hearing in performance reviews or maybe exit interviews, and talk to your customers, see what they think in order to uncover any training needs. And then finally, determine which program to apply for, Express or the general program. You can have both at the same time. So you can actually be doing some training through Express while you're working on your general grant application, and can actually have those two awards at the same time. And then research training vendors as if it were your own money. So talk to colleagues, see if they've worked with trainers in the past. We've got a great resource in the network of community colleges here in the state. And then review a list of recent grant awards, which will give you the names of trainers and companies, training topics, grant amounts, et cetera. See what your friends and neighbors are doing. And then finally, you can see our guidelines in the application at the workforcetrainingfund.org. So with that, questions, comments,